Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll all join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Thank you. And I believe we do have one board member remotely participating. Do we need to do anything more than just announce that, or?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Director Alessio, are you here and present? Can
I'm
you?
here and I can
Thank
hear
you.
you, and my
Thank-
mute is off and my video is on.
Thank you. And can you confirm if there are any individuals over the age of 18 in your premises?
There is none.
Thank you. We may move forward to roll call.
All right, let's have roll call, please.
Leon Garcia,
Here.
Mark Joseph,
Here.
Donald Williams, Kevin Eisenberg, Liz Alessio,
Here.
Scott Sedgley, Alfredo Pedroza, Ryan Gregory,
Here.
Paul Doring,
Here.
Anna Shuto, Margie Moeller, Robin McKee-Cant.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Perfect. Next is adoption of the agenda, which is, seems like 3 consent items. Do I have a motion for that?
So move, Garcia.
All right,
Seconded, McKee-Kent.
okay. We have a motion and a second. Roll call for the adoption of the agenda.
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Donald Williams, Kevin Eisenberg, Liz Alessio,
Yes.
Scott Sedgley, Ryan Gregory,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Anna Shuto, Margie Moeller,
Yes.
Robin McKee-Cant.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay, we now move to public comment. This is for anyone in the public, in person or online, who wants to comment on anything that is not on the agenda today. We don't have anybody online. We do have someone online, but no public comment. Then off we go to chairpersons and board members updates. Do we want to have any of those, or do we want to hold off and do it for the NVTA proper? Okay, perfect.
So, and after, in between this meeting and the next meeting, we'll take a quick break to try to attempt eating some of that cake that's sitting there. That's a cake, by the way. Right. So, you know, the big news is that Measure U passed. Yeah, by an overwhelming support of the community. We received 72.3% at last count, and I think that was 55% of the vote roughly. So I want to thank the board for their congratulatory messages and acknowledgement of staff for all the work that they did. So thank you. Laura, could you pull up the Measure U slide? So, I'll let you know later, but Danielle and I attended the and Tony, the Focus on the Future conference, and there was a lot of information about measures throughout the state, and I wanted to share those with you. So transportations, including municipal measures, Measure U was the only one in the state that passed by a supermajority. A review of countywide transportation measures really tells quite a story, and they're up there on there to show you what was on there for counties. So Madera was the only other county that had a successful ballot measure, but it was an initiative, a citizen initiative, so it only required 50% plus 1. All the other measures failed, and some by, as you can see, significant margins. If you look at Amador in particular, and San Diego, you have to wonder what their polling looked like and why was it really 20 points off, you know, and they just decided to hope for the best. It's unclear. There wasn't anybody representing them that I spoke to at this conference. But I do think that we had, you know, a couple things going for it. The most obvious was that this wasn't an increase. But I think that what was more important in hindsight for me, or a lesson learned, is that the measure was supported by every elected official in the region. And the ballot arguments were signed by our federal and state elected officials, industry, and business leaders. And I think that really showed members of the public that we had built a really strong coalition. We also received glowing recommendations from the Register, the St. Helena Star, and the Press Democratic editorial board. So I'll leave you with that. But I did want to acknowledge staff again because this was really a heavy lift. We've been working on this for 3 years. I want to specifically call out Tony Onorato, Danielle Schmitz, and Adrell Coleman for the modeling and coordinating meetings and providing and creating a lot of information shared with your staff, with you, with members of the public. And in that vein, Emily Terrier for all of the coordination that she provided, news releases, social media, information campaign, that was sent out all over until we couldn't do it anymore. And I also want to acknowledge Kathy Alexander and Laura Sanderlin, who probably coordinated, 100 meetings throughout the 3-year period. So thanks to all of you. But I also just want to acknowledge the entire team, because while we were doing this, it was really took the air out of the agency in terms of our bandwidth and our ability to really take a look and really be focusing on some of the other things that we do. And as you know, we do a lot of other things, and staff managed to pull that together sometimes when there wasn't a manager around to really help and push some of those other areas. So I just want to acknowledge them, especially on the transit side. Rebecca was kind of carrying the load all by herself sometimes. So to Libby and Dexter, and Grant as well, the Vine Trail. I didn't make it to every meeting, and sometimes I didn't make it to any meeting. So I just really wanted to acknowledge them. And I'm back. And so now you're going to probably wish that I was doing another measure, but anyway, just thanks to all of you for that. And that concludes my comments.
All right. Well, thank you all for the hard work getting information and educating the public about the measure. And then on my side, I would say hats off to those elected officials and others who did the campaigning part of the process. We may not have worked as hard, but it's a combination. So at any rate, it is great that we passed. And like I said, I appreciate staff's effort at collecting all that information and making sure that we all had good data when we were talking about the measure. Okay. Any board member updates? All right, then. Oh, I jumped ahead anyway. Okay, then we're on to consent items. We have 3 consent items. Do I have a motion? And we'll have the record show that Commissioner or Director Alfredo Pedroza is here, is arriving. So back to consent items. Do I have a motion to accept those 3 consent items?
So move, Sedgley.
Sedgley, second.
Second, Shuto.
Shuto. All right, let's have a roll call vote.
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Donald Williams, Kevin Eisenberg,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Yes.
Scott Sedgley, Alfredo Pedroza, Ryan Gregory,
Yeah.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Anna Shuto, Margie Moeller,
Yes.
Robin McKee Cant.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, perfect. We have no regular agenda items. Do we have any future agenda items? And if not, then I will adjourn at 1:10. And at this point, I believe we're going to take an extended,
Yes, we're going to take a
Intermission.
few minutes to take some photos with the cake and board members, and then somebody's going to cut it and serve it, and then we can just kind of eat it as we start the next board meeting.
sounds like an excellent idea. We're adjourned for about, yeah, help yourself for bigger helpings if you're hungry. All right.
Cake and coffee.
Cake and coffee. Hey, that's right. That's okay.
I'm gonna pass on the cake. I'm saving up for Thanksgiving. I love your
My Public Works orange.
your blazer. No, on a rainy, cloudy day, you got to be seen.
Did you get me in the background? I was doing the thumbs up and waving for everybody's picture. Hi, Justin.
Hi, Liz. This is a closed session, or are you still doing the meeting?
Yeah, I'm away on business travel for new supervisors training and what's called CSAC. So I'm in Pasadena, so I'm zooming in since I'm on business travel.
Okay.
Just kind of like, organic metalwork, and that way they'll get $7 million more dollars. Well, you just heard of tax agreement?
Doing a big remodel. Rutherford Hill? Yeah. Rutherford Hill, they take a pretty good deal. And report back to it. You'll find out who's serious.
They will never have success. Little bit.
No thanks for me. I'm saving for Thanksgiving. Thank you. No thanks. I'm gonna pass.
I'll eat a piece.
Looks
Oh my
delicious.
gosh.
Love the pass.
large cake.
It is a large.
Where'd it come?
Ah, sweetie pies.
Oh, that's a expensive cake. For some people, this is dessert. It's lunch.
I know, I spent I had to go to the DMV this morning to get my driver's license renewed.
You have to go out there?
Hit the big 7-0.
Oh. I got in just ahead of that, so I think I got a 5-year extension.
Oh, really? Wow.
Just have that a little, but I'm up pretty soon.
Well, you can make appointments, but even with that, it's like,
You had to take a test.
no, it's optional now. I read online that, they used to make you, but then somebody said, well, wait a minute, that's not a law. That's just one of your policies. So you have to make it optional. So as of last October 1, now it's optional.
Hell, I'm not gonna take a test.
Well, you don't have to now.
I know several people that struggled with that.
I know.
Retake and retake.
Well, look at my husband. He loves it.
I was thinking, I was scared. That was like. No.
Think of myself. All right. All right, I will reconvene now as the Napa Valley Transportation Authority Board of Directors meeting and acknowledge that many of us are still eating our cake. It was very good. And if there are strange sounds or if it takes a while for any of us to respond when we ask, it's probably because we have cake in our mouth. And Director Alessio, we apologize. You're not here. It's good. You missed out. All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's the extended call to order. I believe we have Director Alessio. So do we need to go through the same ritual as the last one?
We confirmed Director
Okay.
Alessio's attendance via Just Cause today, and we also have confirmed roll call at the previous NVTA-TA meeting. And now for the NVTA meeting, we do have confirmed attendance from our PCC representative, Devereaux Smith. We do have a quorum.
Okay. Do we need to do the roll call over again or?
No, but when we do voting, we will need to do roll call.
Okay, perfect. All right. We'll have that opportunity right now. Adoption of the agenda. Any changes to the agenda? Any items on consent that you'd like to discuss? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to accept the agenda.
I'll move
Move
to
to
accept the
accept-
agenda.
Okay. Alessio moves.
Second, Eisenberg.
And Eisenberg seconds. Roll call on approving the agenda, please.
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Donald Williams, Kevin Eisenberg,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Yes.
Scott Sedgley, Alfredo Pedroza, Ryan Gregory,
Yes.
Paul Doring.
Yes.
Anna Shuto.
Yes.
Margie Moeller,
Yes.
Robin McKee Cant.
Here. I mean, yes.
Motion passes.
Yeah,
Perfect.
I'm so-
All right. Now we have public comment. Any public comment on an item not on the agenda? Looks like we have Justin. Go ahead. Or-
Thank you, Martha. Thank you, Martha, and good afternoon, or all the city. I wanted to take a moment, say thank you all, the transportation, the Napa Valley bus drivers, and the board members and supervisor. Thank you for keeping me safe. The whole thing this was a very scary. So I'm gonna say thank you. Keep me safe. So thank you.
All right. We appreciate your comment. Any other public comments? All right, hearing and seeing none, we'll move on to chairperson, board members, Metropolitan Transportation Commission, and ABAG updates. I was going to comment on Measure U, but we've already addressed that. And mighty fine, I might add. Any other comments? Okay. We'll go to MTC. Any update there?
Well, I just came from there. So just in terms of the update, you know, with the housing legislation not passing, I think there is continued interest in to continue to do something about it. What I would tell you though, at the regional level, it's not always just about finding new money. It's about what can we do to get out of the way in some ways to build more affordable housing. I will say in 2026 is probably going to be a crowded ballot. You're going to see a regional transportation measure for transit be on the ballot, which might be also competing with a housing measure on the ballot. I can tell you from polling, if you do a polling on a joint measure, it doesn't do well. So I think for those of us that are still going to be around and are bullish around housing, I think it's looking at what policy differences can you take on to make housing more affordable, or what creative solutions might be out there that are not just more taxes, more money. Acknowledging we do need more money. At the next meeting, MTC, we're going to be providing a recommendation on a transit measure that could be on the ballot in 2026. That's going to be looking at the core counties, and then providing an opt-in provision for the 5 or 6 other Barry counties, depending on how it ends up. But I would fully expect that our next representative for MTC is going to have their hands full. There's going to be a lot of work happening in 2025 and 2026. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Next, ABAG, any ABAG update?
Yes, to Board Member Pedrosa's comment from MTC on housing. ABAC had an extensive discussion on the measure that failed before it even got on the ballot. And what was, why he did, the reason for withdrawing it. The rationale seemed to fit. Certainly when we look at things like Measure U, where those who had the similar ones around, that's which passed, ours did significantly. The others did not. Think about the effort we put into Measure U to get that out there. And then think about 9 counties and 101 jurisdictions trying to get that message out. They did an outstanding job. It's just the capacity, the bandwidth of that. I know just the campaigns I worked on, and American Canyon is only real smaller than 25,000 people, but you can spend an awful lot of time trying to get a measure approved. And the ability to be able to do that certainly need a lot of support from the ground up. And that's the only way they really win. But their presentations were really were to the heart of the matter. It certainly would. I would think most folks would have a rational mind to say this makes sense for us, given that's one of the biggest issues we have is housing. But mine is don't give up. There's a way to get there from here. And I think it behooves all of us to do what we can to support. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go to the executive director, there is one thing I did want to mention as chairperson, that today I believe is the last board meeting for at least four of our board members. So I would like to ultimately adjourn in honor of Directors Garcia, Pedrosa, Gregory, and Alessio, with the idea that Alessio may come back with a different hat. But I do think it's fitting that we recognize their service. And they have done a great job individually and collectively, and they need to be recognized. And even though the cake said Measure U, I think each of you should.
It was for us, Kate.
Have a second piece. Have a second piece.
Yeah, each
the
of
cake
you
was
should
for us.
grab a second piece of that cake. And you're right, it did say you did it, and that was in reference to the 4 of you who are retiring. And again, sorry, Director Alessio, you.
Well, I would think it should say y'all did it.
Could have done that. But I do wanted to acknowledge, and depending upon how much time we have, give you all a chance to say goodbye, but it may be after closed session and I just wanted to make sure we acknowledged all of your hard work and years of service. It is appreciated, especially from somebody who's been around for a while and has actually seen all of that effort and the return on all that effort. So that's my comments, and now I'll switch to the executive director.
Thank you. So I wanted to let you know that Patrick Band has been appointed to the CTC's Active Transportation Program Technical Advisory Committee by the California Transportation Commission appointment, which is a 2-year appointment. And in that role, he will advise CTC staff about active transportation infrastructure. So congratulations, Patrick. That's a big deal. On October 28th, I participated in the Transit Transformation Task Force meeting in Monterey. A lot of the discussion was very much focused on how transit-oriented developments are essential for making transit work moving forward. And we identified a number of regulatory challenges and funding barriers, and that will be a main focus, I think, in the report. Which I'll share with you once it's published, although Danielle or somebody might, whoever's here, will share that because I won't be here. I might come as a special, because I think I will stay on this task force because apparently the appointment is not affiliated with the organization, instead the individual. So if you will have me, I will come back and provide you an update with the final report. We also went to the Focus on the Future conference. I had mentioned earlier in my review of the measures around the state. This is an annual conference of the Self-Help Counties Coalition. And what that means is there's 24 counties in the state of California out of 53 that have passed sales tax measures or funding measure to fund transportation. Danielle and I both presented on the measure. I presented in the general session. Danielle presented in 2 breakout sessions. And there was a significant amount of interest in how we did it. And I would just say that all the 3 of us, Tony included, were the bells of the ball down there. So it was kind of a fun conference to go to. On January 7th, there will be a number of Vine service changes. The Route A, which serves Browns Valley, will return to fixed route. It has been a stop-to-stop on demand since the beginning of the pandemic. The new route will emulate the old fixed route, except for that it will actually serve California and Lincoln and before it returns to Soskel, so it won't go directly downtown. The Route G will deviate to serve the county's reentry facility, which is now a staff facility. Those are the only, and there's some adjustments to meet the ferry. The ferry changes its schedule on a different time than the rest of the region. On November 19th, Danielle Schmidt sent you an email requesting you distribute information about NVTA's Active Transportation Interactive Map launch, which will help elicit comments from the public to inform the Active Transportation Plan, which is currently underway. The email asked you to share the information on your email distribution list and on your social media, and we really appreciate your help in that. It's super important. You're really much more the voice that the public listens to, so we appreciate that. And that concludes my report.
All right, thank you. Next, Caltrans update. Do we have someone from Caltrans?
Yes, good afternoon, board members, and congratulations first on the pass of Measure Youth to NVTA and the elected officials. So I'm going to go quickly through the Caltrans report as we have 34 active projects, 3 of them in the project initiation phase. For environmental, some updates. We are working as a partnership with NVTA for the American Canyon multimodal corridor improvements, where the PED milestone will be completed by July 2026. Another project, which is the storm damage in Napa County in State Route 128. We are close to completing the environmental phase. Going to the design, we have currently 10 projects, and one of them has commenced the design, which is major damage in State Route 121 in County of Napa, with a target to complete the design in November 25. 3 projects also has been shifted their milestone for the design development. One of them is storm damage for 5 locations in 121, with a PSNE completion by the end of this month, and another 2 projects, which is the Ritchie Creek Bridge replacement to improve fish passage, that will be completed by the end of this month, and also the Hopper Slough with the extension of the design phase to December of this year. Going to finally the constructions, they are all moving on track. We have 15 projects in construction. One of them has been completed, which is storm damage in Napa 12 to construct rock slope protection with a CCA that has been completed last month. By this, I conclude my meeting, and in advance, happy Thanksgiving to all. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions before we move on? Director Pedrosa, is your speaker on, or?
It's karaoke.
Okay, fair enough. All right, well then, thank you very much. And we will now move into presentations. First one up is board member service recognition. We're going to bring the cake back out.
So this requires people to stand when I call their name, and for photo ops, of course. So Emily would get mad at me if I didn't do this. So first up, Director Gregory. We're doing this by least amount of time on the board to the longest, yes. Director Gregory has served on the NVTA board since 2023. He has served on the State Route 37 Policy Committee and provided unique insight from a policy and engineering perspective. He has offered many creative solutions and shown a great deal of interest in the regional projects, being very supportive of the work we do and a champion for all things projects. On behalf of the staff, thank you for all your support. And do you have a plaque? Oh, well, you have to come out here, so we have to take a picture of the plaque. Okay. And where do you want me to stand? But in front of the sign? Do you want me to to pretend we're shaking hands? Or do you just want Ryan? Emily, do you want both of us or just Ryan? Both.
Yeah.
Okay. That way.
It's like Anna's photobombing from my point of view.
Thank you. So this next one is for Director Alessio. I don't know how we're going to do this. No, maybe, I don't know. Maybe you can make her the big picture and I can stand there with the plaque.
Aw.
So Director Alessio, this may not be the last time you serve on the NVTA board, but it will be your last time representing the city of Napa. Director Alessio has served on the NVTA board since 2019. She served as the chair in 2022 and 2023 and has been a real cheerleader for everything NVTA. I especially appreciate her support on Measure U and her help navigating approval of the measure and being a true booster for getting community support. Director Alessio oversaw the groundbreaking and ribbon cuttings of the Vine Maintenance Facility in Soskel Junction. She has been a strong advocate for all members of the community, but especially for disadvantaged community members. During her tenure, she has been a solid regional voice, recognizing that we gain much more as a community when we work together. So thank you, Director Alessio. On behalf of the staff, we have very much appreciated your commitment to the agency and support for the work we do.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, everybody at NVTA. It's been an honor and pleasure. I've learned so much through the process, and I hope to be continuing as a supervisor in 2025.
Okay, yes, just move on. Okay. Thank you. Director Pedroza has served on the board since 2017. He has served as the chair in 2020 and 2021. He has been a champion of everything NVTA, connecting staff to community members and stakeholders and successfully facilitating difficult negotiations. He has been key in identifying and securing new funding in his capacity as the Metropolitan Transportation Commissioner, where he served an unprecedented two-year terms. He has overseen the groundbreakings and ribbon cuttings for 2 segments of the Vine Trail, the Vine Maintenance Facility in Soskel Junction. He has been a solid and respected leader and advocate for Napa and the North Bay, working to bring transportation solutions to all members of the community. On behalf of the NVTA staff, our sincere thanks for your unwavering support and leadership. Speaking from someone who's very young. Last but not least, Director Leon Garcia has been on the NVTA board representing the City of American Canyon for 20 years. He served as the NVTA chair in 2006 through 2008. Director Garcia has seen the agency through 4 executive directors, consolidation of the Vine Transit System, the construction of the Soskel Gateway Transit Center, the construction of Trancas Overpass, and Jamison Canyon widening. He oversaw the first countywide transportation plan and the first countywide active transportation plan. Director Garcia has also served on the State Route 37 Policy Committee since its inception. He also served on the State Route 29 Gateway Study and provided feedback during the project study report to documents which are shaping the improvements on State Route 29 in American Canyon. Director Garcia has watched over the agency from its infancy
to where it is today, where we play a central role in Bay Area and state transportation decisions. On behalf of the NVTA team, thank you, Director Garcia, for your service and all your support.
Thank you. We have one more presentation, and that relates to number 92.2, Accessible Transportation Needs Assessment Study. And Diana Meehan will make that presentation.
Good afternoon, Chair Joseph, Vice Chair Chateau, members of the NVTA board. Diana Meehan, this is 9.2. This is an informational item on the Accessible Transportation Needs Assessment. And that is a study that we kicked off back in April of this year, taking a look at mobility options or lack thereof for seniors and disabled populations throughout Napa County. If you don't know, we have one of the most rapidly aging populations in the Bay Area. And even the Bay Area actually has a higher aging population than anywhere in the state. This poses difficulties, particularly revolving around transportation and transportation needs for these populations. One of the things that comes up often in different meetings that we attend for people who are groups that serve these populations is transportation, and it's been identified as such. We hope to solve some of those challenges when we reach the end of this assessment. Today, I have the Nelson Nygaard team, the team that we've been working with on this assessment, and they're going to take you through the presentation for where we are today and kind of what happens next. And I'll pass it off to Ezra Pincus-Roth, the project lead for Nelson Nygaard.
Thanks, Diana. And good afternoon. I want to first off thank the Board of Directors for your time today. As Diana said, my name is Ezra Pincus-Roth. I'm a Senior Transportation Planner with Nelson Nygaard, and I'm joined by my colleagues, Sophia Constantine and Naomi Armenta. So we're here to provide an update on the Accessible Transportation Needs Assessment, ATNA. And yes, I can see the screen, so we should hopefully be set up. And so real quick, this will include a recap of the project purpose, a general timeline. We're going to share our key findings to date, as well as the frameworks under consideration for solutions coming out of this plan. And finally, just a rundown of the next steps. So as a recap, ATNA is it's a partnership between NVTA and Napa County to continue on the great planning work that's been done so far, the work that centers the needs of older adults and people with disabilities, but it's specifically for transportation needs. And this project is not just trying to identify those needs, it's also going to chart some action-oriented solutions to meet those needs. So moving on to the project timeline. So when this team got started earlier this year in the spring, we were picking up where past efforts left off, including the Napa County Older Adults Assessment, as well as associated strategy sessions. There was also some past research conducted by NVTA consultants, and over the past several months since then, we've had some really great energy and feedback from the public and stakeholders, which we will detail shortly. Right in the middle, this highlighted bubble with the thick outline is where we are at. It's to develop service and program recommendations. So we're at this milestone in which we have shared findings with the stakeholders, and we've begun to paint a greater picture of accessible transportation needs, but we're still refining our recommendations and solutions to the problems that this plan ultimately seeks to illuminate. So we are about to just recap some of those meetings and some key findings. I would encourage the board and all attendees today to look up the details, which NVTA has posted on a dedicated ATNA page at nvta.ca.gov. There's a link under the Planning and Projects tab with the project name. So moving on. The first stakeholder meeting held on Zoom in June was an opportunity to hear from the group of involved individuals about their hopes for this project and accessible transit overall. We asked the group for an account of strengths, opportunities, weaknesses, and threats. And those details are, which are also online, are just profiled on the right here. Real quick, on the strength side, there's a strong understanding of transportation's role in helping older adults stay connected. And there's relatively good transit coverage in the most populated areas along the main Napa Valley corridor. However, on the challenges side, rural areas face some accessibility challenges. Accessing healthcare can be complex. For example, Medicaid or a service through Kaiser, for example, those kinds of benefits, are going to be specific to those clients. They're not universally available. And beyond local efforts, there are opportunities to improve transportation awareness and benefits through partnerships with healthcare providers and insurers. And major threats like the national economy, state budget, that includes items that are important to note, but they remain outside of local control. And moving on, this summer, the NVTA team hosted a bilingual open house in the exact same room pictured here. It was a bilingual open house to gather public feedback on transportation in Napa County. Community turnout was strong. However, representation from Spanish-speaking community members was limited. The event helped raise awareness of NVTA services, and attendees shared ideas such as expanding demand response transit to underserved areas like Angwin, creating new informative resources for the community of people with disabilities, offering reimbursements for volunteer drivers, and empowering the role of mobility managers to sort of help make those kinds of connections in terms of linking folks to more well-suited transportation programs and services. Since that meeting, NVTA has continued to engage with the community. For example, at the Napa Farmers Market, the pictured display boards in the background here that were used to gather additional input, they have made appearances at the Napa Farmers Market to expand the universe of folks that we're hoping to hear from. And I'm going to briefly hand it off to Sophia, who will recap the most recent stakeholder meeting and summarize our key findings.
Yeah, hi everyone. We recently hosted our second stakeholder meeting again on Zoom. Attendees were able to see some of the draft strategies and provide some feedback on them. Attendees included the Napa Solano area Agency on Aging, some healthcare providers, transportation providers like Molly's Angels, and representatives from the Napa County Older Adults Assessment Project. And we'll be doing a third stakeholder meeting in early 2025. So be on the lookout for that. There we go. So what does this sort of all amount to? Transportation is complicated, but we can call attention to some needs that have been consistently highlighted in the data that we've reviewed, the work that's been done by planning teams prior to our involvement, and conversations that we've had with community members and leaders. And I'm briefly going to run through some existing conditions findings. Like Ezra said, the existing conditions report and the peer review are both available on the NVTA website if you would like to read about anything in more detail. But some of the most salient findings are, medical access is imperative. Most of the specialized healthcare in the area is going to be in Santa Rosa and other cities larger than Napa. If driving is not an option and you don't necessarily have a friend or family member to drive, it's a challenge getting to these appointments on short notice or leaving these appointments in later in the evening. Navigating affordable transportation options is also a challenge. Specialized services can be a challenge to navigate for riders. They may need to make multiple phone calls and website visits to get a full inventory of what they're eligible for. And that assumes that they're okay using smartphones or using computers. There's also limited affordable transportation. There's also limited affordable transportation options. It's a challenge getting around affordably outside of transit. For those specialized healthcare trips, like we mentioned earlier, for those trips for people who aren't on Medicaid but don't have a car, that could be a very expensive and very long Uber ride if Uber or Lyft or another technology provider like that is available. Physical infrastructure improvements are also needed. Reducing physical barriers and making a walk to the Vine bus stop a more realistic prospect means the creation of a new transportation option for potential transit riders in the form of an already existing fixed route bus transit line or paratransit. Of course, this is an ongoing need. It's one mandated by the ADA, which makes the expansion of fixed route bus stops into new places an expensive project since you're adding numerous sidewalks in for that. As well, travel model data supports survey and planning data across multiple sources. We know that most older adults living in Napa County are choosing to drive. Along with that, the travel model data shows that Vine and Vine Go services are optimally located. Transit coverage for much of the city of Napa and Napa Valley is solid. Where Vine is, so is Vine Go from American Canyon to Calistoga, and the circulators and local routes are a noteworthy option that should continue to be marketed to people who may experience issues either finding parking or just not interested in the headaches of driving alone or who cannot drive alone. As well, though, service gaps exist for out of county and some in county trips, specifically longer transit trips, whether it's connecting to BART or to Amtrak, or the airport. It's a sizable challenge that takes time to plan and attempt to make that trip. Looking at data, we also know that trips occur later into the evening. As the pandemic has revealed, we're not bound to 9 to 5 as a society. People have everyday transportation needs that may keep them out later, not just healthcare, but entertainment, seeing friends, attending various public meetings. And finally, transit can't meet all needs alone. Transit is inherently fiscally constrained. And one thing that we're focusing on with this plan is that NVTA, we can't assume that NVTA has all of the funding that it needs. The impetus is to leverage partnerships and get creative with finding additional funding for transit service. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Ezra to talk about some important strategic considerations.
All right. Thank you, Sophia. So the next slide, we have an overview of what we broadly think are the main topics that will center strategies coming out of this plan. Education, number one. Strategies, that includes strategies that spread awareness and support of multiple transportation options. Remember, people are not just a rider of one service. And if we zoom out beyond the county and think about trips to other places in the greater region, that can find somebody having to navigate multiple phone numbers or websites if they're not positive about where specifically to go. So things that would help that education piece could include concepts like a one-call, one-click transportation information and referral program. It can include the services of a dedicated Napa County mobility manager or broker. And so these are some examples of educating related strategies that the team is contemplating to help meet the needs of each rider, as varied and unexpected as they may be. Number two is partnerships. As Sophia said, NVTA cannot do it alone. Vine Transit Service, in the near term at least, expects a pretty fixed funding outlook, but the demand for specialized transit will outweigh that supply. We have a well-respected partner in Molly's Angels to help meet transportation gaps, and so we want to explore with this piece what else can be done. This planning process is a building block for future partnerships, for example, with healthcare providers or other services that are dependent on good, reliable transportation for its clients and customers. So we are going to be convening a working group of entities that will have a larger role in implementation. And it's about starting small. So a hospital representative, for example, may not automatically understand what is needed from them when it comes to transportation in their day-to-day. So we need to bring folks to the table, learn about what the need is, and through conversation, continue to articulate how folks can help and what resources they need to provide that help. And so it takes time, but we see how hospitals have set up shuttles in other places throughout the state and the country, for that matter. And the third is funding, because as mentioned before, transit by itself is cost constrained, and certain recommendations could take up the full allocation of federal Section 5310 dollars. So we want to be aware of those funding realities, but not get complacent. We should get creative about ideas for potential revenues. And that starts with some of the more likely sources to come, such as proceeds through TNC access for all surcharges. So on to the next slide. When we present a strategy, ultimately, we will need to answer the question of who benefits. These are some potential user groups that we want to look out for in this plan. But we also need to allow for nuance and differences in gaining that understanding. Apologies, by the way, if there is any noise outside. Hopefully I'm still coming through. So these listed groups here, they may or may not intersect depending on the circumstances. Understanding that older adults are not this monolithic group is a start. We have to engage with intersectionality, how the experience is going to differ depending on language spoken or one's familiarity with the transit system, as demonstrated by survey results in the past. And these kinds of insights will then help support a plan that speaks to Napa County's diverse population. And lastly, it's important to reality check recommendations in terms of how they are implemented, because we can't do it all at once. Systemic change takes time, and so there are frameworks to think about, steps to take within a shorter time frame. For example, a quick win would be something that can be done pretty easily. Schedule some meetings with those discharge personnel at the hospitals throughout the North Bay. Hand them a stack of phone numbers and schedules and scripts. Make a point to check in again, no fewer than 2 times a year, sort of keeping things rapidly moving, keeping communication lines open. Number 2 is bold moves. Those are things that will make lasting impacts, but they take multiple years. So the idea of suggesting new fixed route shuttle service or expanding paratransit service hours sounds nice, but it's going to take some more planning efforts. It's going to require finding an additional sustainable stream of money, and it's going to require a lot more drivers that need to be hired. So it's a pretty complex multi-step process, and you all already know that. But again, it's important that we differentiate this from what can be done relatively quickly. Third piece involves policy priorities, and these are sort of guiding values throughout all strategies, and they help set an aspirational example for future programs and services. So as Napa County moves ahead and enacts some bold moves, policy priorities may be inclusive of, for example, when working with a third party to operate a new transportation service, committing to leveraging the county's worth in those discussions and seek out specifics in terms of data and transparency from those agreements. That's sort of an example of what we're thinking for policy priorities. And looking ahead, there's many important steps that will take us through March 2025. This includes a third stakeholder working group meeting that's focused on the prioritization of strategies. There will be, as I mentioned, sort of that dedicated implementation focused working group meeting that will, get into the nitty gritty of the management of potential partnerships and programs. And last but not least, we would like to keep the board in the loop, and that culminates with a presentation of the draft report. So with all that said, yeah, thank you all very much.
All right. Do we have any questions before we move on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ezra and the NVTA team, thank you for the always good recognition of Molly's Angels. I just have two quick comments. Can we go back to Sophia real quick? And when you had the 1029 stakeholder meeting, what were some of the strategy solutions that people talked about? I apologize, I wasn't able to be at that meeting.
Yes, no worries. I believe we're going to post the notes from that if they haven't already been sent out, but it's things like, actually, let me pull up that slide deck.
I'm sure you probably did. I'm sorry, I just have missed them.
No worries, no worries. Let me pull up that slide deck, but it's things like scheduling having regular discharge meetings with hospitals, setting up let's see. Okay. It's offering recurring transportation meetings with discharge planners to educate them on transportation services. And we sort of split these into quick wins and then much, much longer term solutions. Free on-demand transportation offered by private and nonprofit hospitals. So obviously that is something that's much longer term. Medical trip and senior shuttles through NVTA and county partnerships. Offering marketing materials for volunteer driver programs and recruitment of new volunteer drivers, offering trainings for volunteer drivers like CDL trainings, marketing the NVTA shared vehicle program, expanding door-through-door and volunteer driver programs, restarting a mileage reimbursement program, developing an accessible transportation task force, participating in MTC's One Seat Ride pilot, thinking about a shuttle or connection to Santa Rosa. I rattled off a lot of things. It's like a list of probably 28 to 30 strategies. So, Deborah,
Sophia, maybe you can just follow up and send it to us.
I was going to say, Deborah, I can make
Thank
sure
you.
that we follow up with you.
It's
Great.
posted on our website and all
Yes.
the meeting details.
I'm so sorry that I missed it, but glad to know it's there.
Yes, and that goes for all of you. It's posted in meeting details, so all of you are able to review that if you'd like.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
All right. I think Director Alessio had her hand up first, and then Director Moeller.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, very good. Looking at the data, do we know how many older adults and those with limited abilities, accessible abilities, are actually utilizing our current public transit? And how many projected would if it was improved?
Want me to take that?
Sure.
Yes.
Do we have data on that?
So the Napa County Napa Older Adults Assessment, the NOAA group, did a lot of surveying. We did some surveying as well. Still, I think it's somewhere around the 80% level of folks still driving for their transportation needs. So it's a relatively low percentage of folks that actually utilize transit. Some of what we're finding out is just not recognizing what's available. So that kind of low-hanging fruit of making sure that there's an awareness of what we do offer and how to access it. That's one of the early solutions, and we've already done some things to that effect. We've got some videos that are out just teaching people that this is transit, this is what we have available, this is what's available to you now. It's one of those situations where folks, when they have an immediate need where it feels very critical, all of a sudden your doctor says you don't have a driver's license anymore, and you don't know the first thing about accessing other types of services that are available. So, as the team mentioned, we're having lots of conversations with the people in the medical community. Napa County is somewhat of what's called a medical desert, meaning that some of the medical types of medical services people need to access are out of county. And so we know that's a significant problem. But the current data that we have is showing that most of our transit services are within an area where most of the older adults or people with disabilities live can access it. So they're within that range. There are a few outlying areas, like we mentioned, Angwin, Pope Valley, areas like that, where there are zero services. So those are certainly some areas that we'll take a look at.
So
And
oh, go ahead,
go ahead.
please.
No, go ahead.
I'm asking because I'm gonna look at my mother as an example. She's 84 years old. She drives. She can now go to the store or Target and get pickup service. She doesn't have to get out. She doesn't have to walk or wait for public transit. It would not be practical or fairly or really safe for her because she does need a cane or a walker for her to, be mobile, safely. And she's just one of, many older adults that I know that are in her situation. They would rather drive. They want to keep their independence. In
Yep.
addition, now, do we have older adults? Do we have a need here? We absolutely have a need. Is the need really directed around getting, groceries or going to the post office, or is it really directed more around medical needs? And because I want to make sure that we have a tight scope of really where the need is at, so we can approach it from that targeted point of view. So I'll let you answer that. And then in terms of the Hispanic Latinx community versus the Caucasian community, do we have demographics and data on that in terms of who's using and who's not, if there's a difference there?
Sophia, were you taking that? I don't know if you were taking that or I'm taking that.
I was gonna say, I was also gonna look to Ezra, but I can answer part of that question. I can answer. I'll do your first question. I'll answer your first question first and let Ezra jump in.
Yep, I'll follow up.
I will say, in terms of what we've identified through the existing conditions report, there definitely is more of a focus on improved access to medical facilities. That's really what we're hearing a lot of.
Right.
There is, I'm an older adult, I can get to a grocery store, I can get to, a senior center. It really seems to be more of that medical trip, that longer trip, something that's out of county, that's harder. I will say we are also creating strategies that focus on, Liz, like you were saying, things like order pickup, and, not telehealth, but actually having health clinics come to you that other cities or that other counties have done in the past, to alleviate some of that need to drive as well.
Yeah.
Ezra, did you have anything else you wanted to add to that?
No, I think just one thought. I think there was a mention of certain kinds of measurements of how the existing system works. For example, in terms of numbers of riders, and it's very important. But also, I would encourage everyone to think. We'll want to think outside the box also in terms of what is an effective measurement of success for some of these maybe more tailored or niche kinds of programs and services. So we've heard medical transportation being brought up, and in practices throughout the country, we've taken note that one successful measurement of performance in those kinds of programs is has there been a reduction in the number of no-shows for specialized medical appointments as a result of these improvements to transportation services. And those are the kinds of benefits that partners want to see. And also it carries its own sort of economic benefit as well if we're trying to make a larger case for future grants.
And when I ask these questions, I know through the Area Agency on Aging recent needs assessment that transportation, I believe, was number one, if not number two, for older adults and needs in Napa County. So I know the need is there. Just trying to figure out targeting where that need is. If the need is, the majority of that need really is with the healthcare systems, the hospitals and medical appointments, I do think there's an opportunity. I saw that in the early slide you showed areas of weakness. And in terms of weak opportunities, maybe it was, or weak areas. And if I remember correctly, it said something to the fact of hospitals may not necessarily be able to add transportation on their 990. I have a unique perspective on this because I worked at our local hospital, Queen Valley Medical Center, for 12 to 20 years, 10 years inside the hospital. And I managed their, among many other things, their shuttle service that they had at the time called the Queen's Carriage. And, I believe, and I think this is something that when they say may not be able to, I think that they may be able to. Of course, if they do, then they'll have those charitable dollars that they report on the 990 would have to be pulled from something else that they may want to fund. But I do think that there's opportunity. And the reason being is that one, it keeps showing up on needs assessments. And two, their priority is access to care. So if it's a need and it's a priority of access to care, then I think that there might be an opportunity and maybe they need help shoring up that would be included as a charitable donation, and help our community get to their appointments. And again with Kaiser too and those out of town appointments, I know that majority of residents in Napa County do use Kaiser at this point. And a lot of those appointments are in Vallejo, and that's very challenging. So I think there's room there to continue to push back on that and in a sense, and also help and provide that clarity
Mhm.
for all
And
of us.
yes. And I was going to say, Liz, I know you had asked another question about I believe it was on basically mode share for Latino residents of Napa County versus white residents. And I can just give you some information from not our work, but the NOAA report that shows that about 83% of older white adults drive themselves. And then after that, they would select walking, and it actually dropped significantly for Latino respondents to the NOAA survey. Only about 40% drive themselves, and actually having a friend or family member drive them is the most common mode of transportation for about 50% of Latino residents.
That's great. And because there is cultural differences in terms of how,
Yes.
family people are supported and families are supporting. So thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for your work. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Moeller.
Yes, I just wanted to kind of come back to some of your outreach and hope that it's not, you haven't completed that part yet. And I wanted to specifically speak to, in the town of Yountville, we have the oldest and the largest veterans home, and there's 650 seniors. They're all seniors. Many of them are also disabled. And I would hope that instead of expecting some of them to come to one of your open houses and look at some boards and get some, give some of their input, that maybe you can take the show on the road and go up to that veterans home. It's really, in a way, a very isolated community of exactly the type of target population we're talking about. Many of these residents up there do not have cars. And one thing that they probably do not need that we're talking about is the medical transportation, because that is provided, because most of their, almost all of their medical care is served either by San Francisco and Fort Miley, or sometimes they go over to Travis, and they do have shuttles that take them there, but they don't have, there is the Vine does stop, but very few of them even know how it works.
They don't know that being disabled, how they can get on that. So I think, if we could spend a little time to reach out to that unique population that's very underserved, it would really, I'd like to see that if you can work that in. Thanks.
Okay, well, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. There's no other comments. I'm going to move on to our consent item. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, next, we are consent agenda items. There's, I believe, 3 items, 4, 5. They keep growing. I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent calendar.
So move Garcia.
Garcia is motioned. Sedgley seconds. Roll call, please.
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph.
Yes.
Donald Williams, Kevin Eisenberg,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Yes.
Scott Sedgley, Ryan Gregory,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Anna Shuto, Margie Moeller,
Yes.
Robin McKee Camp. Motion passes.
Okay, we're now moving to our regular business items, and I'm going to kind of throw a small loop or a small curveball in this process because we're trying to get to our closed session before 3 o'clock. And so on 11.1, construction contract award for the Sasko Gateway Transit Center Tenant Improvements Project, I think the primary action we need is to approve the construction award, authorize the director to make any modifications, as well as providing a construction contingency. Does the board have any questions?
Probably more comments than questions. I know that we've been working on this for quite a while. The need was identified a couple of years ago. And so when, you put out RFPs, this time it's been pretty difficult for all of us finding responsive contractors. But what's disappointing here was that the general contractors from out of county and all his subs listed are from out of county. Little disheartening there. Going through the specifications, 43 pages. I didn't read all of them, but I scanned through them. And I didn't see a lot of mention of LED, or not LED, but LEED or green in the remodel. I know it's an interior remodel, and so, but certain glazing, I was looking at the windows and the glazing to make sure that we're trying to do our part in that. So, yeah, I'm just a little disappointed in that we couldn't, or there was one of the 3 that was non-responsive, but the local workforce to me is important and in our future. And this is a sizable contract that apparently we didn't get. So I'm hoping for the best on this project. But
that is a good point. And given the public bidding process, unless we do something different, we're obligated to take the lowest and most responsive. So although having cut off your presentation, and I apologize for being so abrupt, but I'm also worried about timing here. Are there any insights on how we could do this differently, recognizing the public bidding process doesn't always reflect?
We had
what
how
might be
many
the best
people,
policy?
how many contractors?
We had 3 contractors bid.
No, but we had a number of contractors that signed up for the pre-award conference. And we were really disappointed at the end result of that. So it wasn't because we didn't advertise.
Right.
There was a lot of interest. We don't know what happened. Maybe we can follow up with some of them and ask why they didn't bid.
Okay, that would be good. But again, I don't think we don't currently have any provisions for local hire or,
project labor agreements.
Project labor agreements.
If we use federal funds, we can't do that. It's
Okay.
a violation of title, it's DBE. No. It's a civil rights thing, so it would be Title VI, right? It's a violation of Title VI.
The only other strategy, because I do think local hires, I'm personally sympathetic to, but given that we're now looking at vehicle miles traveled, and that may not be NVTA's mission as much as every jurisdiction, at some point, we should be able to argue that if you really want to reduce vehicle miles traveled, hiring people locally is a great way to do it because they're not going to drive, 80 miles, get to work. So that may be an area that we might be able to explore.
Sure, I think what we can maybe do is, add something about how we encourage them to hire locally, but I don't think we can require it.
Yeah, the public bidding statutes are quite restrictive, so we can explore options, but I can just tell you now that they're fairly restrictive in terms of that, so, but we can look into it.
And being an authority is different than a municipality as far as those Title VI and those other limitations on project labor agreements or how is it different?
It's largely because we have federal funds. He wants to know why it's different. So the city, I guess, has this labor agreement. They have a lot of general funds. We don't have general funds. So a lot of our funding comes from the federal government, and that sort of necessitates that we follow their rules.
Mhm. Okay, Director Chateau?
Sorry, real quick. I just did want to know, I assumed that we would be doing the redesign in the most green possible way in terms of energy efficiency, just how the whole project has been. So can you speak to that in terms of what we designated to the contractor and subcontractors, how they'll be doing and what choices they'll be making? And
So the, I will say our specifications don't have any explicit requirements around energy efficient fixtures. However, they have become much more financially viable. And ultimately, our contractor has the flexibility to submit on the equipment and materials that they will be constructing the facility with. And then NVTA has the ability to reject or accept those materials. We will be we'll be considering the board's input around energy efficiency for those submittals and attempting to persuade our contractor to use energy efficient fixtures and window glazings. In the event that, well, if we direct them to use an energy efficient fixture that wasn't necessarily specified in the contract, there may be an upcharge for that. So we'll evaluate those costs during the submittal evaluation process. So, but I will take the board's consideration.
And I would just
comments
say
in
that we're not
consideration.
changing the footprint of the building, and the existing HVAC system is going to be accommodating the new changes. So, that also probably drove a little bit of how we approach this project.
Okay, and I do think that looking down the road, looking at our specifications, certainly energy efficiency is something that, speaking as a municipality hat, is kind of required. So there may be some opportunities to take advantage, and even if there is a minor upcharge, that to me might be a worthy change order, given the circumstances and so on. All right.
Is there solar on this building?
Yes.
We have solar.
Well, I'm going to go to Director Eisenberg and then Director Doring.
Okay, just to follow up to Director Chateau's questions, is there any reason that we cannot, when making the proposal or setting those groundwork, I know we can't require local participation, but can we require LEED certification? And, well, go ahead, Hans.
Sure. I don't know if we could do it on a modification of this nature because it's within an existing structure. I don't know that much about it. I do know that it typically doubles the cost of a building.
And I'm not asking for a change for this particular project, just a thought for the future that on any project, we should consider the cost benefit analysis of requiring
Sure.
LEED certification.
What we did on the maintenance facility is a LEED-like kind of approach, which I think, ends up with most of the same outcome without the fancy label and the costs associated with it.
Thank you. And Director Doring.
This may be for you, Kate. So in the fiscal impact, I know from time to time, we just state the number and we state what fund it's coming from, but honestly, as somebody who's trying to exercise oversight, I really don't have a good idea of the context. In this context, it's coming from the Transportation Development Act funds. I don't have enough specialized knowledge of that. I think it would be helpful for us in the future to kind of get some context. So here's the total amount that we have in this fund. Here's the amount that we're taking out of that fund. Here's what other things we could be using with that fund. And I know that takes a little bit more thinking, but it would place the item in context so you can truly understand what the fiscal impact is, other than what we know there's a number there.
So like an
yeah.
opportunity cost, like
So,
what?
yeah,
something
and
like
just
that.
an overall amount. I mean, I don't even know, this is 724,000 out of how much. So I noticed that in several items on our agenda, and that
about-
sort of is the predominant way it's presented to us.
Yeah.
So this,
Right.
yeah, going
So
forward, it'd be helpful.
we get about $6 million a year in TD. 12 million. I was close. 12 million a year for TDA. It's our most flexible fund source. We can, use it. We use it primarily to fund the transit system and buy capital for the transit system.
That actually is a good point, just to reaffirm. Because usually you've budgeted most of the TDA funds, and so if there was a residual amount, particularly when it's either unbudgeted or we budgeted X and it's Y, to give you a context of, okay, we're taking all of our contingency, for example, to address this, or we're taking a small percentage. So it does give the board the ability to say, okay, we're not getting too close to the bottom, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that, I guess what I'm thinking about is that we budget at the beginning of the year, and this is one of the things that we budgeted for, and we budgeted a little bit low, so we're going to be taking money from some other, probably a plan that we're not moving forward with. But I would say that the architecture's estimate was $1 million.
833,000 for
Okay, so
construction.
we're below that, and we
Right.
felt pretty good about that, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it is something to work on as far as kind of a fiscal analysis that gives the board a sense of, is this causing a big headache, or if this is business as usual sometimes. All right. Any other questions before we call for the vote? Oh.
Director Alessio has her hand raised.
Oh, sorry. Director Alessio.
Oh, thank you. I was just going to say, if I recall correctly, the board has already approved that we approve this project, and this is just the formal
Awarding the
contract. Yeah, the awarding. So I thought that we had already approved this. As Kate just mentioned, it was originally going to be $1 million. And this is under budget. I also think that if we had the brief presentation, that it might have circumvented some of these questions and doubts. Just a little thought on that, but I'm happy to make the motion to approve this.
As
I
soon
just
as we
asked
give
for
them public comment.
Yeah.
Oh, but thank you.
All right. Any public comments, online or in person? Then I will accept Director Alessio's motion if I hear a second.
Second.
We have one from Doring. Roll call, please.
Leon Garcia.
Oops.
Yes.
Yes.
Mark Joseph.
Yes.
Donald Williams. Kevin Eisenberg.
Yes.
Liz Alessio.
Yes.
Scott Sedgley. Ryan Gregory.
Yes.
Paul Doring.
Yes.
Anna Shuto.
Yes.
Margie Moeller.
Yes.
Robin McKee Camp.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. Thank you. And I apologize for being so abrupt, but we're now back on schedule. So I will be a reasonable guy. Grant, we have item 11.2, consultant support contract for the Sasko Gateway Transit Center tenant improvements. If you'd like to make a presentation and cover anything that I forced you to skip in the last one.
I'll be brief on this one. Thank you, Chair Joseph. So this is a contract award for construction management and inspection of the previously awarded contract for the Sasko Gateway Transit Center tenant improvement projects. This contract would go to T.Y. Lin to provide those construction oversight services and the amount not to exceed $199,000. can answer any questions on this contract.
Perfect. Are there any questions? This kind of goes hand in hand with the last item. Okay, with any public comment?
None.
Okay, then I'll entertain a motion to approve the contract, consultant support contract for T.Y. Lin.
I'll move approval, Shuto.
Chateau moves. Second.
Second Garcia.
Second by Garcia. Roll call, please.
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Donald Williams, Kevin Eisenberg,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Yes.
Scott Sedgley, Ryan Gregory,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Anna Shuto,
Yes.
Margie Muller,
Yes.
Robin McKee Cant.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. Thank you. Now we're on to 11.3.3 on-call task orders with T.Y. Lin. You're still
Thank you, Chair
going.
Joseph. So this item considers approval of two amendments for two individual project work orders that were awarded by Director Miller. The first amendment is for additional technical support services from TOLN for the Transit Signal Priority Program. NVTA is deployed on 8 Vine Transit buses and 5 signalized intersections along the SR 29 corridor in American Canyon. We have deployed the initial program and analyzed initial data outputs. We're requesting additional funding to work with TYLN to continue data analysis and seek ways to improve the Vine Transit system efficiency, as well as identify additional opportunities to expand the TSP network throughout the county. The second amendment is for engineering staff augmentation services. TYLN also has an existing project work order for these services, and we're asking to expand the fee for that project work order. This allows NVTA's engineering division to be a little bit more nimble, provide more services, such as, TYLN has provided drafting services, permit and utility application preparation, overall program management, development of requests for proposals, and Caltrans coordination on some of our larger projects. That concludes my report. I didn't list the dollar values, but they are in the report here, and I'm happy to discuss this further if you'd like.
Okay. All right. Director McGee Cant, do you have a question or? Oh, okay, no problem. Are there any questions relating to this augmentation? Okay. Any public comments?
None.
Okay, then I'll entertain a motion to accept the on-call task order adjustment for T.Y. Lin.
Move to approve Garcia.
Garcia moves.
I'll second McKee Cant.
Oh. McKee Cant seconds. Roll call, please.
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Donald Williams, Kevin Eisenberg,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Yes.
Scott Sedgley, Ryan Gregory,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Anna Shuto,
Yes.
Margie Muller,
Yes.
Robin McKee Cant.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And now we're on 11.4, the Free Transit and Fare Subsidy Program. Additional information from Director Miller.
Yep. Thank you. Good afternoon. Kate Miller, Executive Director. Last month, we presented to the board a summary of fare subsidies, free fare programs that are going on in the North Bay. You asked us to come back and give you a summary of what it would look like if we were to provide free fares for K through 12, elderly and disabled members of our community, and members who are low income. We had to model that based on sales of past types, where riders get on and off, and poverty levels for each jurisdiction. The total subsidy, and it's all by jurisdiction in the table in your packet, is about $40,000. I would just say that the jury is kind of out on whether free fares actually work to encourage ridership in the Bay Area on bus systems. It certainly works on ferry and rail, but you will look at the literature and it's really clear that ferry and rail systems don't have the capacity to actually support the level of new riders that occur when fares are free, which is the reason why they can charge so much. It's probably what I think $8 or something like that to ride the ferry to San Francisco now. So, $16, $17 round trip for the average rider. Similarly, when you take BART from some of the suburbs to San Francisco to the airport, it's pretty expensive. So they can continue to support their system that way. And like, if it's free, then again, they run out of capacity. Elasticity for demand around this is very much focused on each individual system. I provided you with 3 different articles. One is from a transit advocacy perspective that really supports free fares for certain groups. One is very market-centric from a conservative think tank, and they do not support free fares. And then a middle-of-the-road one that acknowledges that transit systems need those revenues to survive. One of the things that I would just encourage us to continue to report to you is what happens when on the Napa Valley College subsidy, because that is actually buried in the student fees. And so it's de facto free to the rider because they can just keep riding no matter what all semester long for really a significant, I think it's $8 for full-time students. So I think it would be interesting to sort of monitor that to see where our ridership in that particular group, how the free fare affects them. And then I will leave it with that and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, yes, I would agree the Napa Valley College scenario is kind of the most appealing. I love the idea of free fares, but I'm a finance guy at heart, so all I can think of is how do you run an operation if you're not getting in revenues? But NVC is a kind of an interesting scenario. So wherever we can find an agency that can cover those costs, then great. But otherwise, that's my editorial comment.
Can you just walk us through the chart, the table 1? I'm not sure I fully understand it. I see the bottom lines there, but the total amount of the subsidy that we're anticipating, I think that's helpful. Page 363. I mean, I assume that is this an annual thing? I mean,
Yeah, this is an
we're talking
annual
about
amount.
$39,000, is that?
Yeah, roughly, yeah.
Wow.
And that's again modeled because we had to use, some, just kind of had to guess at it.
Okay, no, I
Yeah.
understand that, yeah.
Yeah, and do you want me to walk through each one?
Well,
or
no,
how
I
did
just
you want me
wanted to
do it?
know if this is a
So-
year, it seems like $39,000, I guess, relatively speaking, is a modest amount. So maybe you can talk about that.
That's
a little bit.
right. And that's why we broke it down by jurisdiction.
Okay.
And Yountville right now on their shuttle, they provide subsidies so that the shuttle's free. But these numbers represent our regional service that they take. It could be that they actually take more because they may take their 10 to the 11 or the 10 to 29, and we don't know exactly where they're transferring. So again, this is very much a guess. So each jurisdiction, it's broken down by group, K through 12, elderly and disabled, and low-income adults. So for American Canyon, the total subsidy would be $8,700. And this is in addition to the subsidy that you're already paying for your shuttle services. For the city of Napa, based on, again, boardings and lightings and pass sales, $23,000 a year. Napa County, largely, let's see, it's hard to capture the county because they may drive somewhere to get on. That's another factor that's challenging. We can't really figure out, we don't know who gets on at our park and rides, an example. And most of the people in the county live, in the rural parts. And so that was $909 a year. Again, Yountville is $1,700 roughly, St. Helena, $2,300. And then Calistoga, $2,600 a year.
Understood. Thank you.
Just to clarify on that one, that's that for American Canyon, the 8,600 additional subsidy plus what we're already paying equals the 15% fare box ratio, or is that the total cost?
Yes,
Okay.
for those groups, not for
Okay.
everybody, but for
Okay.
those groups.
So there's still another 85% that we're hopefully getting funded through state and federal resources.
That's correct. I did provide in the memo, again, a reiteration of the subsidies that we're already providing.
So it's, okay, thank you. Director Sedgley.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the work that you put in on this. You know, I brought this in a couple of months ago about when I was reading about the Petaluma pilot program, and I thought it was exciting because after all, we want to increase ridership. I think that's one of the biggest concerns that I hear around the community is ridership. You know, we're running this system with not enough riders on it. So that was my goal, as a pilot program to explore that. You know, I think for a 1-year pilot program for $39,000, we should probably be able to define that. I know the TDA money, and I think that fare box ratio is that's still held in advance, right? The government, they haven't reinstitute that mandate, correct?
That's correct. It goes through 2025.
Yeah. And
Right?
so,
Yeah.
so we have that year
2026.
where we
Sorry.
might not have to meet that threshold. So, you know, I think it'd be something worth exploring, and, you know, looking back through the, I know there are different funds, and it always is, but looking back through the bid estimates on our transit center upgrades, I mean, there's a little room in there. I mean, I don't know if we can transfer that over to ridership, but it's all TDA money. So that was my goal. I would hope that the board could look at this pilot program and see what the results are. The college one is a great one, and we'll pick up some of that too. So seems like a good message to send it to our community of that demographic we're trying to reach, to help them navigate rising prices.
Okay, I will just start from, or who is
Okay.
Director Moeller?
Okay, so I think Scott, you mentioned maybe a trial program for 1 year. I was going to throw in an alternate plan, since we just had been talking about the elderly and the disabled. 1 year seems a little short. I was going to throw in, hope it doesn't confuse everybody too much, but my rough math says it would be about half of the 38,000 if we just focused on the elderly and disabled. And not just for 1 year, but then if we went to about the 40,000, it would be 2 years. And I think 2 years worth of data, if we could do one category, might kind of address some of the issues we were just talking about with the elderly and disabled, just as an alternate thought.
Low income?
No, well, you know,
'Cause
that
that's
would
a-
add more, but I'm
Yeah.
just saying, we just
Yeah.
focus on the elderly and disabled, because we're really trying to make a big outreach and accommodate that, because our needs assessment said that was a category we should focus on, so that's why I came up with
Yeah.
that category. So it does eliminate the other two, but
That's where a lot of the ridership is, though, I think, in the K-12.
yep,
A
that's
lot
true
of them,
too.
a
So,
lot of them use it.
yeah. So anyway.
So
just as-
the other issue around identifying low-income adults is that we don't have access to county information. So that would be something that we'd have to get. We don't have any other way of identifying who the low-income people are. So the low-income modeling was all based as a percentage of the poverty level in each jurisdiction. So we'd have to figure out a way to overcome the lack of data there. Or trust that people would come and tell us that they're low income and we just do that. I mean, that would be something that the board would have to decide.
But the K through 12, you would just identify as a rough age if you're.
No, we have IDs for that.
They have
Yeah.
IDs for that. Elderly, you'd use an ID for that. Disabled would be visual inspection, I suppose.
Disabled is, you know, The disabled part is going to be on our fixed route only, not on our paratransit. And then we would just take it at face value, but it'd be something that would be easier for us to identify than it would be, visually, than it would be for someone who's low income.
So just roughly be, if we eliminated the low income estimates, that would take about 10 grand off that number, just as a quick math in my head.
And a lot of that data, PG&E has that on their reduced rates. We use their data, I think, on water rates.
Yeah,
So
we do too, but a lot of people don't.
And
Yes. They don't have access to it and, so how do you identify them when they're jumping on the bus for free? Logistics, I guess.
Okay. Director Eisenberg.
Thank you. One question and then a comment. By the way, what is the definition of elderly? I'm sorry, I can't hear. All right, I'll turn my.
I am elderly. That is the definition. Anybody over the age of 65.
Yeah.
So then the comment. I'm over 65. I could afford the bus, but that's a separate issue. I think our goals, we have to decide goals. One would be increase bus use. That's, to me, the primary goal. So then, even if K-12 maybe not, might be, should be the target audience if that's the group that we would increase. And if we do a pilot project, we'd want to look at all these groups and find out what increases bus use. The second advantage or second goal would be to help people who cannot afford it. So I would absolutely not eliminate low income. I think that should be one of our absolute target audiences. But the primary thing is we want to get people in buses and off out of cars or facilitate people being able to get where they need to go. So I'm very interested if we do a pilot project of where it increases bus use.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's why the Napa Valley College, like giving it some time to see what it does there. Because I'll just remind you that the surveys that MTC administered and that NVTA administered, that fares was not an issue for either, and we did a valley-wide sampling as well as a sampling of our riders. What was more important is direct frequent service.
Right, we'll go to Director Garcia and then to Director Chateau.
Yes, the comment related to PG&E, people on low income. That has validity for me. I was also thinking those who live in low income housing. We have a lot of that being built in American Canyon, a lot of it being occupied now. The Cove, which is slow and very low. There has to be some sort of a criteria, some information possibly could be shared about who are residents there. Just a thought.
Thank you. So in the survey, I saw it was people wanted, fares were not a concern. What was a concern was increased services, but also safety. So what struck me reading these reports was that where it's been applied in some cities, very liberal cities like Portland, Oregon, they've come back because of the safety issues that happened. So I'm a mother of young teenagers, some of who are using the bus. These youngsters use it between Calistoga and St. Helena. I want to make sure safety stays a primary focus for people wanting to use this. I love the idea of what's happening at the college. Let's focus on those groups that need it the most for increasing ridership, but let's do it in ways that doesn't compromise safety and what happens on those buses. So I would say, could we do partnerships like at Yountville with the Veterans Home or Rionda House or Molly Angels, some sort of voucher system or some kind of way that we look at that model once we see how it's working and be able to apply it. But I am concerned with safety when I read those studies.
That struck me as well. Also, now that Measure U has passed, there is some provision to cover low-income transit fares. Director Miller, can you kind of elaborate on what all that is built up to? Oh.
Yeah. So the idea behind that was to gap when MTC stops funding the half fares for low-income adults. So we would continue that. And again, it's really on a, I mean, we don't, MTC has the data, right? So they would provide us with that data and we would continue to support the half fare on, for low-income adults. And this is like single ride, right? So that one of the challenges that we have, our low-income people have, is they can't afford to buy a fare, a pass. So we allow them to get on for half the price of a single fare.
Is there any way we can take advantage of the revenue that's built in to kind of facilitate getting those passes, or explore that as something to work on?
Yeah, I think we can, and I think the one thing that will get us there is when Clipper 2 is installed, because Clipper 2 has an accumulator. Right now, you know, most of the people, a lot of people that are low income don't have credit cards or debit cards or bank accounts. So that becomes the problem about the, you know, providing the pass. And then they also don't have the resources to fund it all. So there's just these innate complications that prevent us from serving the public the way we'd like to.
Thank you. Let me start with Director McGee-Cant and then Director Smith.
Thank you. I wanted to point out that there is one issue with using PG&E for your target numbers for affordable or low-income people, is that mobile home and manufactured communities as well as group homes don't rate on their scale because, for example, I live in a manufactured home community. We don't pay PG&E directly. We pay 1 meter through our office. So in Yountville alone, you have 300 community or 300 family homes that it won't even afford for our water rate discount because we're not paying PG&E. So that's just Yountville.
It's a good point. Other questions or comments? Go ahead,
I
Mel.
wanted to thank Director Mueller for her comment about the veterans home. Just serious high five on that. My concern about the low income and free fares is it puts the driver in the position of having to make a decision of, is this a low income rider or not? And that seems super awkward to me.
Well, we would give them a pass, but I also wanted to comment, Rebecca reminded me via text a minute ago, that the challenge of these pilot programs, and that is once you provide free transit and we can't afford to do it or something goes awry and we decide not to do it, then it's really difficult to get people to pay again. And that's something that we don't ask our drivers to enforce because it usually creates conflict. So I just wanted to make sure that that was foremost in your thinking there.
Chair, I have a question.
Go ahead, Director
Thank you.
Alessio.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I want to ask the question about safety since Director Shuto brought up a concern about safety. Do we have safety issues reported on our buses?
No, but we have had a problem with, you know, people that are using drugs that are, you know, I don't know how to explain it, but homeless because they're just very hard cases to address. And they will use our bus as a way, as a shelter during the day. And they use our facilities that way as well. So it would mean having to engage a BODE, which is challenging when they're on our bus because the bus is not always in the city of Napa where those services are provided. And that has been, you know, a problem here, especially when we had the winter shelter across the street. We still struggle with it. We struggle with, you know, people passing out in the bathroom, and it's just can be a challenge. And yeah, it's not as bad as probably what SF Muni or BART have to deal with, but it's still a potential problem here.
then I'd like to just say that that is a problem of it in of itself. And I'd like to see what we can do to help resolve that problem for all riders. I appreciate Director Sedgley bringing this forward and the comments by this board already. I agree. I think a 2-year pilot is generally worthwhile. And I also support all categories. I believe it's around 50% of our K through 12 are on free food assistance based on income level. So I don't have data on this, but I wouldn't be surprised if the majority of the K through 12 that are using our public transit are also receiving free lunch. It'd be interesting. I don't know if we can find that out, but what Director Eisenberg said is spot on. I mean, we are trying to increase ridership. We're not the first to come up with this idea. Others have come up with it for good reasons. And we're also trying to address an identified need. It's relatively low dollars. If we were doing a marketing campaign, we'd easily blow by the amount of what this would be to provide, passes for these populations that are on the more underserved side. So I would support, moving forward with more information. This is not, we're at the point tonight where we can improve this, but I support looking into this further and appreciate staff time on this.
Okay, Director Garcia and then Eisenberg.
Yes, thank you. This is my Clipper card. It says senior at the top. Some way of being able to, the question we're dealing with, have that included in how we run our operations or people qualifying for it. But it's, I use it for ABAG MTC meetings down in the city to get on BART. Works out well.
Okay. Director Eisenberg.
I seem to recall that there have been special events or days where free transit was provided. I know one that I personally participated in, which was Bottle Rock, but I know that I seem to recall seeing posters in bus stops that talked about whether it was English classes or something that was definitely appealing to the Latino community. And I'm very attracted to specific items which will get people on the bus perhaps for the first time, and they may like it and want to do it more. But I'm asking when you do have a free day for something, are those some of the people who object to paying fees when it's not a special day?
Yeah, so this is not something that we experience here because we haven't had a sustained program where we are providing free transit. We do it for a week here, a week there. And I think I noted in the memo that we've not seen, it's not sustainable to do it that way. It does happen everywhere else, so that have had these pilot programs where it's very difficult. I mean, it's always difficult to get some people to pay. And that is just something that we have to accept as part of the cost of doing business in a public transit system. But when you offer, this is just in the literature for public transit, when you offer pilot programs of any nature, it's very hard to take away that. So if we were, for instance, going to even when we have to reduce service, when we have to eliminate a route, it's painful. So the pilot programs for fares, free fares is no different. It's very difficult to take it away from the public, and it's very difficult to get them to pay again.
Okay. Just so that we can wrap this up, perhaps a good direction might be for staff to continue exploring maybe how better we can target the groups we're trying to help. I think there's been some discussion about does the bus driver have to decide who's eligible, who isn't? We could probably address that, but how do we go about targeting the groups we want to target? If we could explore that a little better before we jump into considering a pilot project, and recognizing that if we're going to jump into that pilot project, it will be really difficult to jump out. And so we've got to figure out where the revenue stream is going to come after the pilot study. So if I might throw that out as a suggestion and then move on.
Sure. And I have a very opinionated staff. I got another text message a minute ago, and we didn't include this, but the cost of administering this is, there is a cost to that. And we may not have the resources to be able to do this.
Yes, as I mentioned at the beginning, I like the idea of the Napa Valley College model because they're providing us with a revenue stream, and then we provide essentially free service.
And they administer it.
Oh, that's
Right.
even better. So I think we have to be sensitive before we jump into doing something that admittedly will get us great press and everyone will love us, but
So,
we have to be there.
why don't we try to refine what if, to bring you a what if, and maybe get 6 months of data from the college, the whole
Okay.
semester, to see, did that change anything? Also report back. I mean, I think I did give you a cursory data on some of the free pilot or free fare programs in the North Bay, but I'll report back on that as well.
Okay. All right. Director
Yeah,
Sedgley?
I'd rather maybe take a different look at it as maybe, bring back a potential, program. Because it seems like we hear a lot about why we cannot do this. There's a lot of roadblocks. And I understand there are, but if we have staff come back with, here's something that could possibly work, and here's the challenges, and then we could take action on whether we want to try to implement something like that. But just to come back, and I think we're going to get a lot of the same data that, we don't have the funding, there's these concerns. So I'd rather have it looked at it from a different angle on how to make it work.
Yeah, and to some extent, part of that requires us to be able to identify our target population groups. That's, because to simply say, let's provide free fare to these groups when we don't have a good way of identifying who these groups are is not a good way to implement anything, especially if it's going to be difficult to turn it off. So I appreciate your perspective, but I do think it's a little more fact-finding and maybe, without, or a more impartial assessment of here's how we might be able to identify the groups we're trying to support or not support.
Can I just add one more comment back to Director Eisenberg's comment? I think there's kind of two things: who we're trying to support, but I kind of favor who we're trying to increase the ridership for, within those groups, because that's really, I think, part and parcel of why we want to do this. Because if we can not only, help some groups, but those are the groups that we want then to hopefully continue riding. I think that needs to be part of it rather than just a subsidy for general low income types. So I would factor that in as a criteria to really get the goal we're really after.
Right, but that still requires our ability to more precisely target whichever group we want to help or not help. Okay. Then I am going to conclude this item. It was for information only, and
Just-
move to.
Just want to check that there's no public comment on this item.
Oh,
Yeah.
good point. Thank you. Was there any public comment on this item? All right. Well, then we'll move to 11.5, federal and state legislative update.
Yeah, just real quickly, I provided a summary of the measures and propositions and so you can look at that at your leisure. Probably no surprises. And the good news is that the state receipts are coming in significantly higher than projected. And that concludes my report.
All right, very good. Any questions, public comment, or anything else before we move into closed session? And despite my borderline abusive behavior, I appreciate the fact that we're now ready to go into closed session, and it's only 3:05. Okay, very good. Is there anything that needs to be declared before we go?
No, the board's now entering into closed session regarding the item 12.1 public employment title for the position as executive director.
Perfect. Okay. Right, and then once we're enclosed, we'll continue to leave our mics on if we want to be heard. Okay. Perfect. All right. Well, I wanted to make sure we had plenty of time for discussion. And therefore, I apologize if I've upset anybody. But won't be the first time I'm rude and obnoxious. What's the code? I don't know. Okay. No, I think they're different codes. Okay. It looks like we're taking a small break before we start our closed session. Well. Yeah, you're getting us behind schedule. Yeah. I'm trying to channel Chris Canning as far as running these meetings where he was very picky about being on time. All right. Okay, I think we're ready to go, even though Director Sedgley is temporarily out. Couple of things to let you know that the ad hoc committee met and interviewed two firms out of the 5 that we received. We eliminated 3 due to the price or just a general assessment, and interviewed Ralph Anderson and Koff and Associates. And based on those 2 interviews, we all agreed that Ralph Anderson is the best candidate to do the executive recruitment. And I believe we're in the process, well, we'll begin the process of entering into the contract and going through that whole ordeal. In terms of timing, the goal was to say, okay, we know Kate is leaving June 30th, so let's back up from there. One of the comments was the more time you have, the better. So it's not like you can take a break. The idea being that going out to recruit, it's better to just almost not even try to compete with the holidays because no one's going to pay attention. That we ought to be able to start recruiting, first thing January 1 or thereafter. So that does give us some time to finalize the contract, get a clear understanding of what kind of a director we're looking for, what kind of direction the board wants to go in, which will help the recruiter figure out how to find that.